Hello, Al. All right. So with me today, I have Al Lindsay. He's an engineer by trade, built and led the team that created Amazon Alexa Echo. And of course, Amazon Prime back in the day, 2008 to 2011. Al, welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to.
Hey, thanks for having me, Finn. And just to sort of expand on a few of the things you mentioned there. Engineer by trade, studied computer science at the University of Waterloo in Canada. Worked in telecom for 10 or 12 years in the Canadian industry, and then joined Amazon in 2004. And worked roughly 15 years at Amazon, culminating in the last 8 years being dedicated to Alexa and that whole space.
Yeah, I mean that must have been an incredible journey of growth. I mean, there's very few companies that have accelerated at that rate to that volume.
Growth in every dimension you can imagine. I mean, for a while there, it was the fastest consumer electronic product growth, beating even iPhone in the number of units and devices built and sold, but also in terms of organizational growth, going from a team of literally zero to now over 15,000 people working on Alexa at Amazon, going from a small number of cloud-based hosts supporting all of those services to tens of thousands of nodes handling massive volumes in the cloud. So scaling services, scaling teams, scaling device manufacturing, shipping, customer bases. A lot of really interesting, fun lessons learned there.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about Elerian and what these guys are doing.
I think what's drawn me to Elerian that I find interesting is the idea that they're taking a voice forward approach. So they're operating in the call center space and building solutions for call centers. But they've approached it from how do we solve for the virtual agent speech problems first, and in particular, how do we build a really high quality natural language understanding component that's able to make sense of what's going on in the conversation with the end consumer, and allows their partners to provide a human-like experience without necessarily having to staff a massive human workforce to do it.
Right.
So I really was drawn to the solve the hard problems first. That's close to my heart. Go after the. It'd be easier to go and build another call center in a box solution that integrates with all of the the existing products that are out there. There's plenty of people who have done that. And that's straight engineering problem. It's much harder to go after the novel speech challenges first, nail those, and then use that to drive the more straightforward engineering challenges that come with a call center. Yeah, I think again another thing that struck me was just sort of the maturity and the breadth of considerations that went into that NLU platform. So things like context and caring for context from turn to turn, bringing to bear the customer's specific data knowledge about their customers, whether it's incorporating their email addresses, which would not be an vocabulary thing for an off-the-shelf ASR or entity recognition solution. Just sort of the ability to tailor the models more.
Because I can still phone up my bank and I say when it says when's your birthday, I say 1st of April 1978, and the thing that the thing says please say it again, and it doesn't get it. I mean you think this is a solution deployed on a fairly large multinationals behest, and it's still not picking up these basic things, right? Because it's this big long string of rules. So it's really refreshing to see a company come to the space like Elerian that starts to address this.
Yes, and there are just so few functional NLU solutions today, as you note, that are able to do more complex utterances like that.
Right. Yeah. Right. And so for NLP, NLU, I mean, do you think that are call centers where the sort of NLP, NLU breakthroughs of the future going to be born, or is that the market driving force, or I mean, there's probably a few, right? So
I think what we're seeing is this technology, speech, spoken language understanding, and sort of artificial voices like text to speech being applied to almost every facet of business.
Yeah,
So I think call centers are one important element of it. I think we're seeing it in almost all areas of business.
mm,
So yeah, I think the advances are going to come sort of across the board and be pushed from a
yeah,
lot of different marketplaces, which is one of the interesting things about taking a voice first approach if you're Illyrian, and then applying that to a vertical like the call center vertical. Is now all of the things that you learn and feed back into your systems can be leveraged to then apply that same tech to other business cases.
right, right, yeah, yeah. And then again, it's this technology that's been wished for, and people have had various punts at doing this because it's such a big thing, right? It's such a natural thing to have a computer that can talk, or a system that can talk back to you. It's been written into science fiction from the year dot,
Sure.
and yet again, time and time again, and advances happened. We haven't had it. We haven't got that talking computer. Another advances happened. We still haven't got there. Um, is there a tipping point where this stuff all gels, and suddenly we leave our desktops behind, and we just wander around the street talking?
Well, I do think that voice as a user interface is amazing and natural. You don't have to be trained on how to use it. It's accessible to everyone, including people who grew up without technology, seniors. But I don't think it's the only interface for all scenarios. So, you mentioned walking around on the street. Imagine you're sitting on an airplane, getting ready to take off, responding to your email.
Yeah,
I think there's an example where your text-based chat might actually be a better interface just from social
yeah,
norm.
yeah,
Um, but voice is definitely that natural interface that allows you to just leverage what you've been learning since you were an infant, without having to think about, what does that box mean? Does that chevron represent there's more information if I touch it?
yeah,
Having to be trained to use a totally different user interface, even though the phone with its touch interface felt so natural, you just see it and you touch it, you still have to be able to understand the hints and the cues and
yeah,
the user interface design with voice.
yeah,
I think the holy grail would be that it's like talking to another human, and if you even if you have to fumble your way around a bit, you're able to figure out how to
yeah.
get what by asking or rephrasing or approaching it in a verbal way.
Right. And of course, it's spread across these different categories. So I think we touched on earlier voice and chat, and the sort of differences between them. They both require NLU, but one has this sort of extra part sandwiched on the end to transmit the sound, turn the sound into words.
I would expect that the majority of those utterances and interactions are also command and control today. So,
Okay.
whether it's a music or an in-car, send a text, read a message, smart a smart home interaction, turn on the lights, make sure I close the garage door. I don't think there's a lot of conversation going on with agents, whether
Yeah.
it's via phone or an Alexa device or other end devices. And I think that's really where the future development will take us.
And I guess that's what partly what makes the contact center space really interesting, because
Far more
that
conversation. Yeah.
yeah, that there's a whole range of things that people are discussing in there.
Yeah, it's a compound goal. There are multiple things that both the virtual agent and the human are trying to accomplish in that conversation,
Right.
and infinite
Um,
ways they might get from where they start to the end of that set of goals.
yeah. And then the drivers for the contact centers to adopt this technology are, I mean, I suppose pretty self-evident. There's one is the cost of being able to automate some of this stuff, and then two, but it's not just cost. It's they're aiming really for customer experience.
Right.
And I guess there's ways for a conversational agent, an automated conversational agent, to not just reach the human level, but potentially surpass it.
I think one of the things is that in the call center space, the workforce turnover is much higher than in other industries. So, I'm not sure. I don't have handy the stats, but if it's 10 or 20 or 30% of your workforce is still fresh, being trained, fresh off training, inexperienced. So the possibility for errors is higher. Whereas, with your virtual agent, you always have the expert, and probably, it would be your top expert out of all of your human agents in terms of what they know or what they can know. So always being able to reach an expert, I think is going to improve the customer experience on its own.
Right.
Yes.
And that handoff problem where you make sure you get to the right person. I mean, that you sort of almost solve that out of the box, right? With an automated system.
And you're not waiting to reach that person.
You're not pressing 2 or 4 or whatever. You're just saying, I want help with this, and boom, you're there.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a noble goal for any for any company. If we can get that waiting time down, then I think we've diminished the frustration in the world, right? Yeah. So what does the competitive landscape look like for this? I think, again, we talked about it a little bit before, but for a company like Elerian, where are the threats and what's the landscape?
It's interesting. I think there's lots of space. So I don't think that there's existential threats around for companies that have developed novel spoken language understanding solutions. I think it's an interesting market space where, as I said before, everybody's trying to gain the expertise, and what we're seeing is a lot of the big companies with deep pockets are bringing it in-house. So if a competitor starts to emerge that looks highly capable, we're seeing a lot of them get snatched up by large companies that want that expertise in-house rather than to leverage.
Because you just can't find the talent.
So what it results in is this constantly changing landscape of who the players are. There are some established players, obviously, that have been around for a number of years and likely won't go away because I think they have really viable large growth opportunities and plans if they stay independent. But there just aren't that many. So and again, when a bright one does pop up, it's I'm seeing them get snatched up a lot of the time. So it is hard to find companies in this space with this expertise. The second part of it is really the available talent with expertise in this space. I think a lot of people are rushing into this field, but the folks that really have the expertise are those who already have their 9-year PhD plus many years after that. And it's really hard to accelerate that just because there's a higher demand. So it is, Illyrian's lucky in that they have some of this talent on their bench, which goes a long way. I think it's hard to just start a company and find the talent you need to really have that deep expertise in big data, AI, ASR, NLU. There's a limited bench of people in the world with the expertise today.